Hi everyone, welcome back to Step by Step Embryology. We are talking about how babies happen, and last time we talked about fertilization, and now we're going to talk more about week 1 of pregnancy. And I realized that I'm going to make a whole separate video about implantation, so we're not going to get there quite yet. We will lead up into it, but as we go forward in this series, it's going to keep getting more complicated, and I want to break this down so that we can address some of the details without glossing over some key points. So to keep this digestible, I'm going to keep them pretty short, and we're going to cover from just after fertilization leading up to right before implantation. So here we go, week 1. Last time we saw fertilization, we saw the sperm deposit the nucleus into the ovum, and now after that has happened, we have a single-celled zygote, and this zygote is surrounded by the zona pellucida, which is kind of this membrane that is released at the same time that the follicle is released from the ovary. So if you remember, the mature follicle is what is ovulated. This is also known as the ovum. It is surrounded by this zona pellucida, which will be a key point later on in this lecture. But just for now, that is what the green is. We'll see what that does later. So this zygote that is single-celled is going to divide. We're going to start to undergo cleavage. And cleavage, we're seeing some replication and division of these cells. So you get a 2-cell stage at about 36 hours. And then after that, at about 2 days or 48 hours, you see 4 cells. So you don't have any differentiation of cells at this point. You just have division replicating the cells that you already have. So this is just cleavage. And then after the next phase, you can see where this goes. We get 8 cells at about 60 hours. And so we have this cleavage phase that kind of leads into a condensation phase where you start to see some tight junctions forming between all of these very similar cell types. And then going into the next stage, you will start to see some differentiation form kind of in the middle, but we're going to keep dividing, and we're going to get about 16 to 32 cells at about 72 hours, and by the 16 cell stage, this is considered a morula. And you can see that we have different cells in the middle, different cells on the outside. We've started to differentiate a little bit, and then after this 72-hour period, we're going to form a blastocyst. So these are kind of the parts of the blastocyst. We have some differentiation here now. This is about day 4 is when you start to see this happen. And this blastocyst is what is going to end up implanting into the uterus. So we still have the zona pellucida for right now. And then this black layer of cells that we saw kind of develop is the trophoblast. And this inner cell mass is what it's called, also known as the embryoblast. If you can see from the morula, you had some cells starting to accumulate in the middle. They're going to differentiate into this inner cell mass, which is going to eventually become the germ layers of the embryo. So the trophoblast on the outside, we're going to see what happens a little bit with this today. This will happen more with implantation and that video. But the trophoblast on the outside is going to form the placenta, and the chorion, the inner cell mass, is going to form the embryo. And this space in here is the blastocyst cavity. This is just empty space that we're going to see more later on. So looking at this blastocyst, we have at a certain point, about day 5 or 6, kind of can be variable, you have hatching. So at this point, the zona pellucida is going to fall off. It's going to break open, and the blastocyst is going to be free from the zona pellucida, meaning that it's going to be ready to bind to the endometrium. So it heads into the uterus, and it's going to start heading towards the wall of the uterus, or the outer layer of this wall is the endometrium. So you see this blastocyst which is now free from the zona pellucida. It is going to undergo apposition. It's going to get up really close to the endometrium at about day 6 or 7. And then at that point, it's kind of touching the endometrium, but it has not bound yet. The next phase is attachment. At day 7 or 8, you're going to see this blastocyst binding with this molecule. You can see the little pink thing sticking up here from the endometrium. Those are L-selectin molecules. They are going to bind to the blastocyst and form an attachment. So this is where you get attachment of the blastocyst to the endometrium, hence the stage of attachment. And then after this, we are going to get invasion, and this is the beginning of implantation. So at this point, we're going to see more differentiation of this trophoblast. So the trophoblast, the part that is directly connected with the L-selectin in the endometrium, is going to become the cytotrophoblast, and then it's going to invade into the endometrium and differentiate into the syncytiotrophoblast. And we're going to talk more in detail about this differentiation process and how we get the placenta to form, how we get connection to the uterine spiral arteries, because that's going to be a bit more nitty-gritty of a process, solidifying the rest of implantation. But this invasion stage happens at day 8 or 9, and this is where we're going to end it for today. So I hope you enjoyed this shorter video, and stay curious, everybody. We will see you all in the next one.